Elena Rodriguez wiped down the marble countertop for the third time that morning, her cloth moving in slow, careful circles. The kitchen sparkled like always, but she kept cleaning anyway. In this house, there wasn't much else to do. 3 years she had worked here, and 3 years she had watched this family fall apart piece by piece. The Harrison mansion sat on 12 acres of perfectly manicured lawn, with rooms so big you could fit her entire childhood home in just the living room. When she first got the job, Elena thought she had won the lottery. Good pay, beautiful house, nice family. What more could a girl from a small town in Mexico ask for? But money couldn't fix everything, she learned. Sometimes it just made the emptiness echo louder. Elena walked through the hallways, her soft shoes making barely a sound on the polished hardwood floors. Family photos lined the walls, but they all seemed frozen in time. Every picture showed the same thing, a happy family that no longer existed. There was Mrs. Catherine Harrison with her warm smile and kind eyes, always wearing something elegant but never stuffy. Mr. Robert Harrison looked different in those photos too. He actually smiled back then, his arm around his wife's shoulders, his face relaxed and content. And then there was David. In every photo, the boy beamed with pure joy. Even though he couldn't see the camera, he somehow knew exactly where to look. His mother's hand was always somewhere in the frame, guiding him, supporting him, letting him know he was safe and loved. The pictures showed birthday parties, family vacations, quiet moments in the garden. A life filled with laughter and music and hope. That was before the accident. Elena paused in front of one particular photo. Mrs. Harrison sat at the grand piano, her fingers dancing across the keys while David stood beside her, his small hands resting on the instrument's polished surface. You could almost hear the music just by looking at it. The way mother and son leaned toward each other, sharing something beautiful and secret. Music had been their special bond, their way of connecting without words. The piano still sat in the same spot in the living room, but it might as well have been a tombstone. Nobody had touched those keys in 2 years. Mr. Harrison couldn't bear to hear it, and David wasn't allowed anywhere near it anymore. Elena continued her rounds, checking each room with the same methodical care she always used. The dining room table was set for one, just like every day. Mr. Harrison barely ate breakfast before rushing off to his office downtown. The man worked 16-hour days now, 7 days a week. Elena suspected he stayed busy so he wouldn't have to think about what his life had become. Upstairs, she knocked gently on David's bedroom door. "Come in," came the quiet response. The 12-year-old sat by his window, even though he couldn't see the view outside. His room was organized exactly the way his mother had left it. Elena made sure of that. Every book, every toy, every piece of furniture stayed in its exact place so David could navigate independently. The boy had learned to move through his world with careful precision, counting steps and memorizing the location of every object. "Good morning, David," Elena said softly. "Did you sleep okay?" The boy turned toward her voice and managed a small smile. "Yes, thank you, Elena. Will Papa be home for dinner tonight?" It was the same question he asked every morning. Elena's heart broke a little more each time. "I don't think so, sweetheart. He has very important meetings today." She straightened his already neat desk and adjusted the curtains. "Are you hungry? I could make your favorite pancakes." "Maybe later," David said, turning back toward the window. "I like listening to the birds in the morning. Did you know they sing different songs at different times of day?" Elena smiled despite the sadness that seemed to live permanently in her chest these days. "Really? Tell me about it." "Well, the robins start first, right when the sun comes up. Then the cardinals join in. By mid-morning, the whole choir is going." David's face brightened as he talked. "Mama used to say that every bird has its own voice, just like people. She said if you listen carefully, you can tell them apart." The boy's mother had been full of wisdom like that. She saw beauty in everything and taught her son to do the same. Mrs. Harrison had this way of describing the world that helped David see it through his other senses. She painted pictures with words, helped him feel colors through music, showed him that being blind didn't mean living in darkness. Mr. Harrison tried to be a good father. Elena knew that. But grief had wrapped around him like a thick blanket, blocking out everything else. He provided for his son, made sure he had everything he needed, but he couldn't give him what he needed most: connection, understanding, hope. Elena finished tidying the room and headed back downstairs. The house felt different without Mrs. Harrison's presence. Before the accident, There had been music floating through the halls, friends stopping by for coffee, laughter echoing from the kitchen. Mrs. Harrison had been the heartbeat of this home, and when that heart stopped, everything else just sort of stopped too. In the living room, Elena couldn't help but pause again at the piano. It was a beautiful instrument, a baby grand that probably cost more than she made in 5 years. The wood gleamed from her weekly polishing, and not a speck of dust dared to settle on its surface. But it stayed silent like everything else in this house. She remembered the first few months after Mrs. Harrison's death. David would sometimes sneak downstairs and just sit at the piano bench, his fingers hovering over the keys but never quite touching them. Elena found him there one morning, tears streaming down his face, his small shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. "I can't remember her song," he had whispered. "Mama always played this special song just for me, and I can't remember how it goes." That's when Mr. Harrison made the rule. No piano, no music. He said it was too painful, that they all needed to move forward instead of looking back. But Elena wondered if maybe he was afraid too. Afraid that if David played, if music filled the house again, the grief might be too much to bear. So they all lived in silence now. David spent his days in his room or the garden, listening to birds and wind and distant traffic. Mr. Harrison buried himself in work, coming home only to sleep and leave again. And Elena moved through the empty rooms like a ghost, keeping everything perfect for a family that had forgotten how to live. But sometimes, when she was dusting the piano, Elena would press one key very softly. Just one note, barely audible, like a tiny prayer floating up to heaven. She hoped that somewhere, Mrs. Harrison could hear it and know that her beautiful instrument was still loved, still cared for, still waiting, still hoping that someday, somehow, music would return to this house. It was a Thursday afternoon when everything changed. Elena was carrying fresh towels upstairs when she heard something that made her stop in her tracks. Someone was in the living room and they weren't supposed to be. She set the towels down carefully and crept toward the top of the staircase. The sound came again. Not music exactly, but the soft whisper of fingers moving across piano keys. Elena held her breath and listened. Someone was touching the piano but not playing it. Just exploring. Her heart pounded as she made her way downstairs. Mr. Harrison was at work, like always. He wouldn't be home until well past dinner time. But if he found out someone had been near his wife's piano, there would be trouble. Big trouble. Elena turned the corner into the living room and found David sitting at the piano bench. His small hands rested on the keys, but he wasn't pressing them. Instead, he was feeling their shape, their texture, the way they gave slightly under his touch. His face showed a mixture of longing and fear, like he wanted something desperately but knew he wasn't supposed to have it. "David," Elena said softly, not wanting to startle him. The boy jerked his hands away from the keys as if they had burned him. "I'm sorry, Elena, I wasn't playing it." "I promise I wasn't playing it. I know, sweetheart. I know." Elena walked over slowly and sat beside him on the bench. "But you want to, don't you?" David's lower lip trembled. "Papa says I can't. He says it makes him too sad to hear music in the house." Elena looked at the boy's face and saw something there that broke her heart. Hope mixed with fear. Desire battling with obedience. David was 12 years old and he had been living in silence for 2 years. 2 whole years without the music that had once been such a big part of his life. "Your mama played piano, didn't she?" Elena asked gently. David nodded, his eyes filling with tears. "Every day. She had this special song she made up just for me."
She called it David's song. She would play it when I was sad or scared, and somehow it made everything better. His voice dropped to a whisper.
"I miss it so much." Elena felt her own eyes getting wet. This poor child had lost not just his mother, but also the music that connected him to her memory. She thought about her own childhood, how her grandmother would sing while she cooked, how music had been like sunshine in their small house. "Would you like me to teach you something simple?" The words came out before Elena could stop them. David's head snapped up. "You know how to play piano?" "Well, not really piano," Elena admitted. "But my grandmother taught me songs when I was little. Folk songs from Mexico. They're simple, but they're beautiful. Maybe I could show you one." "But what if Papa finds out?" Elena looked around the empty house. Mr. Harrison never came home before 7 o'clock. It was only 2 in the afternoon. They would have plenty of time. "Your papa is at work until late tonight," she said carefully. "We could try just one song." A very quiet one. David's face lit up like sunrise. Really, you would do that? Elena's heart melted. When was the last time she had seen this child truly excited about anything? Yes, but we have to be very careful. And very quiet. She placed her hands on the keys, trying to remember the simple melody her grandmother had taught her so many years ago. This song is called La Llorona. But don't worry, it's not scary. My grandmother used to sing it as a lullaby. Elena pressed one key very softly, then another. The notes seemed to hang in the air like little birds. She played a simple melody, just 5 or 6 notes, repeated slowly and gently. It's beautiful, David whispered. Can you teach me? Elena took David's right hand and guided it to the keys. Feel this one? This is middle C. Everything starts from here. She helped him press the key. Now the next note is right here next to it. David's face scrunched up in concentration as Elena guided his fingers through the simple melody. His touch was hesitant at first, afraid to make too much sound. But gradually, as Elena encouraged him, he began to press the keys with more confidence. That's it, Elena said softly. You're doing so well. I can feel the music, David said, wonder in his voice. It's like the notes are talking to each other. Elena smiled. The boy had his mother's musical instincts, even if he had never been formally trained. Yes, exactly like that. Music is a language all its own. For the next hour, Elena taught David the simple melody. She showed him how to find the right keys by counting, how to use his sense of touch to navigate the keyboard. She told him about her grandmother, how music had filled their little house with joy even when they had very little money. In my family, Elena said, we believe that music lives in the heart, not in the hands. Your hands just help the heart speak. David played the melody again, this time without her help. It was slow and careful, but it was music. Real music. His face glowed with happiness. Elena, he said suddenly, do you think Mama can hear me? The question caught Elena off guard. She looked at this brave, lonely boy and felt a fierce protectiveness rise in her chest. I think your mama can hear everything you do, sweetheart. And I think she would be so proud of you right now. They practiced for another 30 minutes before Elena started to worry about the time. Mr. Harrison sometimes called the house in the late afternoon, and if David wasn't in his room, there would be questions. We should stop for today, Elena said reluctantly. David's face fell. Already? Your papa might call and you need to be upstairs doing your homework. Elena stood up from the bench. But David, would you like to do this again tomorrow? The boy's smile could have powered the whole house. Yes, please. It has to be our secret, Elena warned. You understand that, right? Your papa isn't ready for music yet, but maybe someday. I understand, David said solemnly. It's our secret. As they walked upstairs together, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in this house for a long time. Hope. Maybe she couldn't bring Mrs. Harrison back, and maybe she couldn't fix Mr. Harrison's broken heart, but she could give this child something he desperately needed. She could give him music. That night, as Elena prepared dinner in the silent kitchen, she hummed very quietly to herself. It was the first time she had made music in this house, and it felt like a small rebellion against all the sadness that had settled over the Harrison family. Tomorrow, she would teach David another song, and maybe, just maybe, they could start to heal the silence that had been killing this family one quiet day at a time. Music, Elena's grandmother used to say, was the medicine for broken hearts. Perhaps it was time to start the treatment. 3 weeks had passed since that first lesson, and Elena could hardly believe the change in David. The quiet, withdrawn boy was slowly disappearing, replaced by someone who hummed while eating breakfast and tapped out rhythms on his bedroom walls. It was like watching a flower bloom after a long, cold winter. Their daily piano lessons had become the highlight of both their days. Every afternoon at 2 o'clock, when Mr. Harrison was safely buried in meetings across town, Elena and David would meet at the piano. What started with simple folk songs had grown into something much more. Today I want to teach you something my cousin used to play at weddings, Elena said, settling beside David on the piano bench. It's called Cielito Lindo. It means beautiful little sky. David's fingers found their starting position without hesitation now. His hands had learned the geography of the keyboard, could navigate from one end to the other with growing confidence. Elena marveled at how quickly he picked things up. It was like he had been storing up musical hunger for years, and now it was all pouring out at once. This one has a little jump in it. Elena warned. Your left hand has to move down here while your right hand stays up high. She guided him through the melody slowly, her hands covering his to show him the movement. David concentrated hard, his tongue poking out slightly like it did when he was really focused on something. After a few tries, he had it. I can hear the wedding, David said suddenly, his eyes bright with imagination. There are flowers everywhere and people are dancing and everyone is happy. Elena's heart swelled. This was what had been missing from his life. The ability to dream, to imagine, to see beauty in the world again. Music was giving him that back. Tell me more about the wedding, she said, continuing to play the melody softly. The bride is wearing a dress that sounds like wind chimes when she moves, David said, his hands following Elena's on the keys. And there are children running around with ribbons and old people sitting in chairs telling stories and the smell of fresh tortillas. Elena laughed with delight. You paint pictures with words just like your mama did. David's smile faltered for just a moment at the mention of his mother, but then it returned stronger than before. Do you think she would like this song? I think she would love it, Elena said honestly. I think she would love seeing you play music again. As the weeks went on, David's skills grew by leaps and bounds. Elena taught him everything she could remember, lullabies from her childhood, celebration songs from festivals, even some of the hymns they sang at church back home. But David wasn't content to just learn other people's music. He wanted to create his own. It started small. He would change a note here or there in one of Elena's songs, making it sound different, more his own. Then one day Elena found him at the piano playing something she had never heard before. David, what is that beautiful melody? The boy's cheeks turned pink. I made it up. Is that okay? I was thinking about the story you told me yesterday, about the little bird who got lost and found his way home by following the music of his family. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. It's more than okay, sweetheart. It's wonderful. David's composition was simple but haunting. Just 8 notes that repeated and changed, like a bird calling out in the darkness. Elena could hear the loneliness in it, but also the hope. It was the sound of someone reaching out, trying to connect. Could you help me make it longer? David asked. I can hear more of it in my head, but I don't know how to make my hands do what I want. From that day forward, Elena found herself learning alongside David. She had never composed music before, but together they figured out how to turn his musical ideas into something real. David would hum a melody or describe what he heard in his imagination, and Elena would help him find the right keys to bring it to life. The house began to change. Music floated through the empty rooms like sunlight streaming through windows. Elena found herself humming while she cooked, and sometimes she would hear David singing softly to himself as he did his homework. The mansion, which had felt like a mausoleum for so long, was starting to feel alive again, but keeping their secret was getting harder every day. David's excitement about music was spilling over into the rest of his life. At dinner, he would ask his father questions about the piano, about his mother's favorite composers, about the music books that still sat gathering dust on the shelf in the study. Papa, did Mama ever write her own songs? David asked one evening as Elena served their soup. Mr. Harrison's spoon clattered against his bowl. Why are you asking about that? I was just wondering. Elena told me that some people make up their own music instead of just playing other people's songs. Elena felt her stomach drop. She had been teaching David so much about music that he was naturally curious about his mother's musical life. But every question seemed to hit his father like a physical blow. Your mother is gone, David, Mr. Harrison said sharply. We've talked about this. I know she's gone, Papa, but she used to be here and she used to play music. I'm allowed to wonder about her, aren't I? Elena watched the pain flash across Mr. Harrison's face. She could see him struggling, wanting to share memories of his wife but unable to bear the hurt that came with them. It's time for you to focus on your studies, Mr. Harrison said finally. Music is not practical. It won't help you in the real world. After his father left for his office that night, David came to find Elena in the kitchen. His face was sad and confused. Why doesn't Papa want to talk about Mama's music? He asked. Was she not a good piano player? Elena dried her hands on her apron and knelt down to David's level. Your mama was a beautiful piano player, David. She played like an angel. Then why does it make Papa so angry when I ask about her? How could Elena explain grief to a 12-year-old? How could she help him understand that sometimes love hurts so much that people try to push it away? Your papa isn't angry, sweetheart. He's sad, so very, very sad. When he hears about music, it reminds him of your mama, and the hurt feels too big to carry. David was quiet for a long moment. But music reminds me of mama too, and it makes me feel happy. It makes me feel close to her. Elena's heart ached for this wise little boy who understood something his father had forgotten. Everyone grieves differently, David. Your papa just needs more time. But as Elena watched David struggle with his father's rejection of anything musical, she began to worry. Their secret lessons were supposed to bring healing, but instead they seemed to be driving a bigger wedge between father and son. David was blossoming with music, but his father was moving further away from both of them. Still, when she saw the joy on David's face when he played his little bird song, Elena couldn't bring herself to stop the lessons. Music was healing this boy's heart, and maybe, just maybe, it would eventually heal his father's too. She just prayed they wouldn't get caught before that could happen. Elena glanced at the kitchen clock for the third time in 5 minutes. 4:30 in the afternoon. Mr. Harrison wouldn't be home for hours. They were safe. In the living room, David was working on a new song he had been composing all week. He called it the Sunshine Song because, as he explained to Elena, it sounded like what he imagined sunshine would feel like if you could touch it. His small fingers moved across the keys with growing confidence, creating a melody that was both simple and heartbreaking in its beauty. That part right there, Elena said, pointing to a section even though David couldn't see her gesture. Play it again, but slower this time. Let each note breathe. David nodded and repeated the passage. The music floated through the empty mansion, bringing life to rooms that had been silent for too long. Elena smiled as she watched him play. In just 6 weeks, this child had transformed from a lonely, withdrawn boy into a budding musician. His whole face lit up when he played, and Elena could see glimpses of the happy child he had been before tragedy struck his family. Elena, David said suddenly, lifting his hands from the keys, I want to play this song for Papa. I think it might make him feel better. Elena's stomach tightened. They had talked about this before. David, you know we can't tell your father about our lessons. Not yet, but why? This song is so happy, and Papa is so sad all the time. Maybe if he heard it. Your Papa isn't ready for music yet, sweetheart. His heart is still too hurt. David's face scrunched up in frustration. But that doesn't make sense. When I'm hurt, music makes me feel better. When I miss Mama, playing piano makes me feel close to her again. Elena sat down beside him on the bench. Over the past 6 weeks, she had watched David work through his grief in a healthy way, using music as a bridge to his mother's memory instead of a wall against it. But his father was stuck in a different place, unable to move forward or backward. Sometimes grown-ups have a harder time healing than children do, Elena explained gently. Your Papa loved your mama so much that thinking about the things she loved makes the missing hurt too much. That's silly, David said with the blunt honesty of a 12-year-old. If you love someone, you should want to remember the things that made them happy. Before Elena could respond, they both heard something that made their blood run cold. The sound of a car door slamming in the driveway. Elena's heart pounded. Mr. Harrison never came home this early, never. Quick, she whispered urgently. Go to your room, hurry, but it was too late. They could hear the front door opening, footsteps in the hallway. Elena stood up from the piano bench so fast she nearly knocked it over. David sat frozen, his hands still hovering over the keys. David? Mr. Harrison's voice echoed through the house. Elena? The footsteps were getting closer. Elena's mind raced, trying to think of an excuse, any explanation that might save them both. But there was no time. Mr. Harrison appeared in the doorway of the living room, and Elena watched his face go through a series of emotions in just a few seconds. Confusion first as he took in the scene before him. Then recognition, then something that looked like betrayal, and finally a anger so fierce it made Elena take a step back. What is this? His voice was quiet, but Elena could hear the storm building underneath. Papa, David said, his voice small and frightened. I can explain. You... Mr. Harrison pointed at Elena, his hand shaking. You did this. Mr. Harrison, please let me explain. Elena started, but he held up his hand to stop her. Explain what? That you went behind my back. That you deliberately disobeyed my wishes. His voice was getting louder now. That piano has been off limits since my wife died. Off limits? David slid off the piano bench and moved toward his father. Papa, please don't be angry. Elena was just teaching me some songs. Mama would have wanted me to learn music. The mention of his wife seemed to break something inside Mr. Harrison. Don't you dare tell me what your mother would have wanted, he shouted. I knew your mother better than anyone, and I know that she would never have wanted her memory turned into some game. It's not a game, David said, tears starting to flow down his cheeks. Music isn't a game. It's beautiful. It makes me feel happy again. Happy? Mr. Harrison's laugh was bitter and painful to hear. You think this is about being happy? Your mother is dead, David. Dead. Playing her piano won't bring her back. Elena stepped forward, unable to stay silent any longer. Mr. Harrison, please. David has a gift. His mother would be so proud. How dare you? Mr. Harrison turned on her with fury that made Elena flinch. How dare you presume to know anything about my wife or my family? You're the housekeeper. Nothing more. The words hit Elena like physical blows. After 3 years of caring for this family, of watching David grow up, of trying to hold this broken household together, that's all she was to him. The housekeeper. Papa, stop, David pleaded. Don't yell at Elena. She was trying to help me. Help you? Mr. Harrison's voice cracked. Help you do what? Live in a fantasy where your mother's death doesn't matter? Where we can just play music and pretend everything is fine? No, David said firmly, wiping his tears with the back of his hand. Help me remember Mama in a way that doesn't hurt so much. Help me feel close to her again instead of just missing her all the time. For a moment, Mr. Harrison's anger seemed to falter. Elena saw something vulnerable flash across his face, a glimpse of the broken man underneath all that rage. But then the walls came back up stronger than before. Pack your things, he said to Elena, his voice cold and final. You're fired. I want you out of this house within the hour. Elena felt the world tilt around her. Mr. Harrison, please. Think about David. He needs... I'll decide what my son needs, he cut her off. And what he needs is to accept reality, not live in some make-believe world where music solves everything. David ran to Elena and threw his arms around her waist. No, you can't fire Elena. She's family. Mr. Harrison's jaw tightened. She is not family. She works for us. Worked for us. And now she doesn't. Elena knelt down and hugged David tightly, trying not to cry in front of him. This brave, talented boy who had just started to heal was about to lose another person he cared about. The unfairness of it made her heart ache. It's okay, sweetheart, she whispered to him. Everything will be okay. But as Elena went upstairs to pack her few belongings, she could hear David at the piano one last time. He was playing the song he had composed for his father, the Sunshine Song. The melody drifted through the house like a prayer, like a goodbye, like a last desperate attempt to reach a man who had locked his heart away. When Elena came back downstairs with her suitcase, both father and son were crying. 3 weeks had passed since Elena left the Harrison mansion, and the house felt deader than ever. Mr. Harrison sat in his home office, staring at a pile of bills and documents that needed his attention, but his mind kept wandering. The silence was different now. Before Elena's piano lessons with David, the quiet had felt peaceful, protective. Now it felt suffocating. David had barely spoken to him since that terrible afternoon. The boy went through his daily routine like a robot, eating breakfast without enthusiasm, doing his homework without complaint, answering questions with single words. But the light that had started to return to his eyes during those weeks of music lessons was gone again. If anything, David seemed more withdrawn than before. Mr. Harrison picked up his coffee cup and realized his hands were shaking slightly. He hadn't been sleeping well. Every night he replayed that scene in the living room, hearing David's tears, seeing the hurt in Elena's eyes as she packed her belongings. He kept telling himself he had done the right thing, protecting his family from painful memories. But deep down a voice whispered that maybe he had made a terrible mistake. The phone rang, jolting him from his thoughts. Mr. Harrison? It was his lawyer, Patricia Chen. I have that background report you requested on Elena Rodriguez. When Elena had first started working for them 3 years ago, they had done a basic background check. But after firing her, Mr. Harrison realized he knew almost nothing about the woman who had been caring for his family. In a moment of curiosity mixed with guilt, he had asked Patricia to dig deeper. What did you find? He asked. Well, this is interesting, Patricia said. Elena Rodriguez has been sending 60% of her salary to a small town in Mexico called San Miguel de Flores. At first I thought maybe she was supporting family members, which would be normal. But I dug a little deeper. Mr. Harrison frowned. Elena had been making good money working for them, but 60% was a huge chunk of her income. What was she sending money for? That's where it gets really interesting. She's been funding a music program at a local school. Not just funding it, she basically created it from scratch. The school serves children with disabilities and couldn't afford music education. Elena's been paying for instruments, music books, even a part-time teacher's salary. The coffee cup slipped from Mr. Harrison's hand, shattering on the hardwood floor. What did you say? According to the school director I spoke with, Elena told them she learned how important music could be for children who face challenges. She specifically mentioned working with a blind child who found joy and confidence through piano lessons. Mr. Harrison felt like he couldn't, breathed David. Elena had been talking about, David, there's more, Patricia continued. The school director said Elena never wanted any recognition. She insisted on staying anonymous. The only reason they knew her name was because she had to put it on the bank transfers. They'd been trying to thank her properly for years, but she always refused. After Mr. Harrison hung up the phone, he sat in stunned silence. All this time he had thought Elena was just the housekeeper, someone who worked for a paycheck and nothing more. But she had been quietly using her own money to help other children like David, children who needed music in their lives. The guilt hit him like a physical blow. Elena had given David something precious, confidence, joy, a connection to his mother's memory, and Mr. Harrison had punished her for it. Worse, he had called her just the housekeeper, when in reality, she was the kind of person who gave away most of her income to help children she had never even met. That evening, Mr. Harrison knocked on David's bedroom door. "Come in," came the quiet response. David was sitting by his window, just like he used to before Elena started the piano lessons. His homework lay finished on his desk, but he looked empty, defeated. "David, I need to talk to you about Elena." The boy's head turned toward his father's voice, but he didn't say anything. Mr. Harrison sat down in the chair across from his son. "I found out something today. Something that makes me realize I made a very big mistake." For the first time in weeks, David seemed interested. "What kind of mistake?" "Elena has been using most of her salary to pay for music programs for children with disabilities in Mexico. Children like you who need music in their lives." Mr. Harrison's voice cracked slightly. "She's been doing this for years, David, helping other kids learn music because she believed it was important." David was quiet for a long moment. "She never told me that. That's the kind of person Elena is. She helps people without wanting credit for it." Mr. Harrison leaned forward. "David, I was wrong. About the music, about Elena, about everything. I was so scared of remembering your mother that I forgot what she would have really wanted." "What would Mama have wanted?" David asked softly. "She would have wanted you to be happy. She would have wanted you to play music and find joy in it just like she did." Tears were rolling down Mr. Harrison's cheeks now. "And she would have been grateful to Elena for giving you that gift when I was too broken to do it myself." David stood up and walked over to his father. "Papa, are you going to bring Elena back?" "If she'll forgive me," Mr. Harrison said. "And David, I want you to teach me to play piano. I want to learn the songs Elena taught you. I want to remember your mother the way you do, with music instead of silence." The next morning, Mr. Harrison drove to Elena's small apartment across town. When she opened the door, her eyes widened with surprise and worry. "Mr. Harrison, is David okay?" "David is fine, but I'm not." He took a deep breath. "Elena, I know about the music school in Mexico. I know what you've been doing with your salary." Elena's face flushed red. "I don't understand. You've been helping children learn music. Children who need it just like David needed it." Mr. Harrison's voice was full of emotion. "Elena, I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for it anyway. I want you to come back. David needs you. I need you." Elena was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. "And the piano lessons?" "I want you to teach both of us," Mr. Harrison said. "I want music back in our house. I want to honor my wife's memory the right way." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Mr. Harrison, there's something else," he said quickly. "I want to start a foundation, a music education foundation for children with disabilities in my wife's name, and I want you to run it." Elena's hand flew to her mouth in shock. "You've been doing this work already on your own with your own money," Mr. Harrison continued. "Now I want to help you do it properly with real resources." "What do you say?" 6 months later, the Harrison house was alive with music again. David had progressed to complex classical pieces, and Mr. Harrison was slowly learning the simple folk songs Elena had taught his son. But the most beautiful sound of all was when they played together, father and son, connected by melodies that bridged the gap between grief and healing. The Catherine Harrison Foundation had already provided music education to over 200 children with disabilities. And every evening, Elena would play David's song, the piece David had composed for his father. It had become their family song, a reminder that love, like music, never really dies. It just waits for the right moment to be heard again.